All right, welcome back to Open Water Night 2. We are recording this to put onto YouTube for your amusement as well as mine, and to make sure that we're doing a good job for you as well. Plus, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always go back to the video and we can see the instant replay. So better than the NFL that we can go through and check things very closely. Well, good. Welcome back. You guys made it through night 1. What was the thoughts? A little bit like drinking from a fire hose? Good. Well, it is like that. It gets a little easier, a little easier, a little easier. You get more and more comfortable. Definitely, it's about building comfort. It's like we talked. We're going to do some classroom stuff. We're going to take you out and build some skills, practice in the water. Then we're going to bring it back. We're going to talk about that. We'll build more skills in the water, and then we're going to bring it back and build some muscle memory in those same skills. The nice thing is it sounds a lot more scary than it is. There's this tonight and Tuesday night are the two biggest nights. The last night, Thursday night, is kind of the makeup night of we jokingly call it all the Scuba Olympics. They're just little dumb things we do like launch an SMB. So we're going to teach you how to fill a balloon underwater. You won't actually have to do it underwater, but we'll show you how to do it. We'll talk about those kind of things, what an SMB is, and we'll go through some of those things. And we'll talk a lot more about pretty fish and coral, and don't stomp the coral, and don't kiss the eels, and little things like that are fairly important. Again, my name is Benjamin Hadfield. I'm a dive master instructor. Aaron could not make it tonight, so it'll just be me and David teaching tonight. As we go through this process, I always like to talk about the process. What's beyond open water? What does that look like, right? And really, now's the time to start thinking about, what do I want to get out of diving? Do I just want to go to Australia? Am I taking this course for one dive in Australia, or is this going to become something that's bigger than that, right? And so this is some of the people that I've done personally. As you can see, my name is on all of them. And so these are all dive masters that I've certified at one point or another through the process. And so they started with open water. A lot of these, Don, I did his open water. David, I did his open water. Ryan, I did his open water. Stephen came to me previously. I did Ben's open water as well. So they all came to me, and they sat in your same shoes. I sat in your same shoes. And we got to thinking about it, and I started researching. And pretty much on day 2, I knew where I wanted to go with diving, right? I knew that I wanted to be into tech diving. I would do big, cool stuff in caves and long dives and 200 feet and trimix. I'd read on the internet. So I knew where I wanted to go with this. I just never realized it was going to take me to instructor, to be honest with you. I just wanted to do the big dives. That was all I had in my mind. Is as I went through the process, then all of a sudden I found myself as a master diver, then an assistant instructor, or a dive guide, and then a dive master. Then pretty soon I was an assistant instructor standing and teaching this stuff. And then I was technical certified. And then before I realized that, I fought my way through and became an instructor, and just kept on, right? So it's one of those things. It definitely is a bug. The good news is you don't need bad habits. Scuba counts as a bad habit because it's definitely not cheap, right? But it gives you an idea. So start thinking about that. Where do you want this to go, And just because as you look at dive master and dive guide, doesn't mean you have to lead professionally. There's 2 types of dive guides, dive masters out there for you guys to understand. The first one is somebody that's confident enough to lead friends and family. They go to that pinnacle, and that's what, for example, that's where Stephen wanted to get to. He wanted to get to the point, and Ben, same thing. They wanted to get to the point where they could lead friends and family comfortably, where they're not getting paid for it, but they were the guy that could see the issues before they happen and help keep everybody safe. They have families, right? So there's a non-professional dive guide. You can absolutely turn it into a professional dive guide with a shop as well, and you can come out and you can learn how to. I jokingly call nail jello to the wall or herd cats, and you get very good at it after a while, and you get a better understanding of that. You get to help with scuba skill updates and things like that, and then eventually, if you really like that, you can move yourself up to assistant instructor, and you can stand in front of a class and actually teach it and envelop your students with skills as well. So something to think about. I always like to kind of put that out there as well. The other thing as well to be aware of is we do teach a lot of other courses. One of the ones that, if you're feeling uncomfortable and you don't just feel like you don't have perfect buoyancy when you leave here and perfect trim, come back and let us teach you a perfect buoyancy class. Usually a few weeks after you've done open water is a great time to do that, because we'll start talking about balance, we'll start talking about trim, we'll start talking about how do we checkerboard the weights around in such a way to get you in the right position and make you comfortable. My students will tell you that when I'm teaching tech, it annoys the crap out of them because I sit in the middle and I make them go around and do skills around in certain loops around me, and there's times that they wonder if I'm asleep because I'm not moving and just watching and just relaxing, and I'm thinking about all the cool things in life, and I get to that point where I can just about fall asleep. It's an important skill. Buoyancy and trim are very important. We can absolutely teach that to you. It's a great fun course to do. I like to do it over the course of 2 sessions. And then finally, just to give you an idea, we talked a little bit about this previously, but this is your basic journey through diving. After you get 12 log dives and 2 specialties, you become a specialty diver. 4 specialties programs and 24 log dives, you get to advanced diver. And with that'll give you the opportunity to do bigger boat dives, bigger dives and more complex dives because you'll have a lot more education under your belt, right? As we talked about in last class, I consider this like entering 1st grade, right? By the time you get to advanced diver, you're about 5th or 6th grade. You're ready to stay home by yourself and do the laundry once in a while for your parents for a couple hours without burning the house down, right? I think that was about 5th grade, 6th grade for my kids, where I trusted them where they were going to burn the house down, right? And then finally after that, 4 specialties, 50 log dives, and one of my favorite courses in the world, stress and rescue, makes you a master diver. It's the highest level of diver and the most sought after in recreational diver. We complete that as a mentorship program as well. If you make it to master diver within this calendar year, they have, this is from last year, but it's the same basic idea. They have the aggressor trip. We definitely would love to see one of our divers win the master diver challenge and get to go on the 7-day aggressor, all expense paid. And as we mentioned, you get on this boat and they orientate you to everything. You have some food, you go diving, you come back, you have some more food, you talk about diving, you go diving, you come back, you talk about diving, and you eat. So you pretty much eat and dive for 7 days. It's pretty freaking awesome. Other specialties and other directions you can go. Here's some beginner courses, and if I had to choose basic courses in this past that I went, nitrox is an absolute must. I would do it as part of this class. We could do it next Friday night if you'd like, and knock that out. It makes your diving safer. So anybody that wants to dive longer, safer, have more energy after your dives, then nitrox is for you. It's absolutely perfect. So we'll get you signed up on Tuesday, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and send out an invite for you guys. Now, which one of you is Idaho Potato or Idaho Spud? I'm trying to remember. Are you Spud? I had Pebbles Van Boom, and then. That's her. Yeah, I changed it. Okay, I wasn't sure which one of you was emailing me. I was like, I emailed Pebbles, but I got one back from Idaho Spud.
We signed up with that one. That's just kind of our joint one. Actually, all the emails go to the same place.
There you go. Well, cool. Well, nitrox is definitely for you. Beginning courses, the ones I would do if it were me, and this is what I did, I would do these 4 as my key ones, other than the stress and rescue, of course, and perfect buoyancy. But deep diving and night limited viz and nitrox, between those 3, those will cover 95% of the diving you guys are going to want to do. With deep diving, that'll give you a certification to go to 130 feet. That's the maximum recreational limit. And night limited viz lets you do the night dives. And night dives are amazing. I absolutely love diving at night, especially in the Caribbean. One of my favorite stories is we were diving along in Roatan. It was dark out. We had our red lights on. My wife and I were kicking along over the surface about 60 feet. We came across this lobster. He was head to tail about that long. I mean, he was literally, I put my arm up. He was longer from my pinky to my elbow. And he's just cruising along, just just having a good old time. And he had these really long antennae. It was great. So we came up behind him very slowly. And I touched one of his antennae, and he was like, and he couldn't see us. It was awesome. And because we had our red lights on. And so he finally chilled out, and we touched his other antenna. He's like, it was fun. It was like we were invisible to him, but it was fun to watch him kind of just big old spiny point lobster. And then we also, that's usually when you see the squid and the octopus come out. One of my favorite dives for a squid was I was in Hawaii, in Maui, and I was doing a night shore dive with a friend. And we'd come back around to the breakers, right? And there was this coral reef that was, I don't know, probably from here to there, kind of big circle reef. And we came across a squid, and he was about this big, and probably about this big around. He was a good sized boy. And, he was this really pretty maroon, just really, really pretty. And I looked at him, and after about 4 or 5 minutes of watching the cool squid just kind of chill there for a while, like I got bored. I was like, I'd like to see something else. And so I told my buddy, I'm going to go around the reef. And I go around the reef. I come back around, and there's this really beautiful royal blue squid, same size. I looked at him like, what the heck? I looked at my buddy, it's like, 2? And he's like, he changed colors. So they have the ability to camouflage and change colors. So very, very cool dives at night. You see definitely different stuff, and stuff starts coming out of its hidey holes at night. So definitely worthwhile. So night limited is navigation or deep. I like to know where I'm at, so navigation is always a key. And my wife will tell you I'm a world champ on navigation. So those are some of the courses that I really like. Stress rescue is a lot of fun. And definitely, I find a way to stress you. I find a way. I find situations that will stress you out, and we talk about it, so that you're able to identify that kind of stuff. And then obviously wreck diving is a lot of fun. I love wrecks. It's one of my, Nikki doesn't like wrecks as much as I do, but I really, really like wrecks. And then if you're a little older and you want to dive a little bit differently and more comfortably, side mount is amazing as well. I primarily dive side mount. Other cool courses, for the love of God, please don't pay for any of the ecology courses. You can learn more on Google than that, but I took them and became an instructor of them. Well, they were free too, but there was that. But so I have something that I can teach on the boat and have fun with. Wave size and currents. Photo and video is a great course if you want to take photos underwater. It's really perfect buoyancy on steroids. So it's a great course as well. And if you have kids, Explorer programs is tons of fun. And then, of course, as you start getting into more advanced courses, David will be certifying on your guys' night day at the Ryrie in dry suit and full face. I teach ice. Love teaching ice. It's one of my favorite courses to teach as well. Altitude diving, if you're going to dive around here, you definitely should take an altitude course, understand the difference. And independent diving is when you get a lot farther down the road. That's a great course to pair up as a dive guide. And while it says independent diving, it means that you're diving independently of others. While a lot of people call it the solo diving course, it's really that you're independent and you're self-reliant. So I like to think of it more as a self-reliant course. And when you finally get up to the big kid stuff, this is the stuff I really love teaching: extended range nitrox, foundations of extended range side mount, decompression diving, extended range, and advanced rec are tons of fun. So if you want to be able to stay down as long as you feel like, and as long as you can carry gas, tech is for you. So they do have bundle kits as well that we like to go through. So let's talk a little bit about what we learned last week. The purpose of the BC is what? You got 4 answers. Which one's correct? Maintain neutral buoyancy during the dive. Oh, B? Oh, I thought you said D. I'm sorry. I'm a little deaf. So D is actually right. Control your ascent and descent rates, right? As you guys learned, you add air, as you let air out, and as you add a little bit of air, as you guys got the opportunity to lay on the bottom, you get to float a little bit. And that's your key, is your buoyancy compensator, is your ability to control. Think Goodyear blimp, right, kind of ideas, as it gives you that ability to float at a specific level and not crash into things, right? That's what we're looking for. So 3 basic rules of scuba stated in the proper order of importance are what? What do you think, Michelle? Breathe continuously, ascend slowly, and maintain control. Never dive alone or beyond your level of training is exactly right. Give me 2 high fives. Good job. I'm sorry. Let me give you your fist bump for your B. Good job. So, all righty. Let's just go through this. As David said, the joke for me in my classes is that I'm required by standards to say this 52 times. But the first rule of scuba is what? Always breathe. This is not a breath hold sport. For the love of God, don't hold your breath. It's not a good idea. There will be times I'll tell you that I held my breath, but there's specific situations and reasons. For example, we were diving at Bear Lake, and we were about 30 feet offshore at 9 a.m. in the morning, and there was a huge school of like 50 or 60 really cool striped suckerfish from about me to the fireplace. And so what I did is I was on a level, I held my breath for a second, and I pushed my way into them very gently, and I got to the point where a couple of them bounced right off my mask. It was cool. So, but please, for the love of God, don't hold your breath, right? The second rule is what? Exactly. Ascend slowly. Maintain control. This is like driving your car. Take your hands off the wheel and push the gas, you crash into crap, right? Same thing with diving. If you maintain control, you're not going to crash into things that you could hurt or injure or have injure you, because I promise you in the ocean there are plenty of things that will stick you, poke you, bite you, and sting you. And there are some things that you just rub against and will cause reaction, like fire coral, not your friend. Pretty to look at, not pretty to touch. The third rule, Scub, is exactly. You are not certified to do it, don't do it. All right, the concept of buoyancy. David, are you ready?
Stay on the slide, please. Okay. So as we've talked about, your buoyancy compensator is awesome for buoyancy. And that allows you to do 3 types of buoyancy. Did you guys do your homework? Yeah? What are the 3 types of buoyancy? First one. Positive? Perfect. You guys did do the homework. I'm so happy. Okay. So, which one's positive? Negative? Perfect. All right. So, when we're positive, we are going to tend to float. This is useful if you want to do swim across a really mucky bottom without mucking it up. You can go a little bit positive, go head down, swim down a little bit. That keeps your feet kicking up instead of down towards the bottom. Negative buoyancy. This is great for when you're doing a descent. Get it just a little bit negative, and then you're just kind of swimming along. It's also great for an ascent. Believe it or not, you want to be negative while you're going up. Why is that? Exactly. Because if you're negative, as you come up, that air is going to expand. If you're positive already, you're going to become more positive. If you're negative, you can get as far as neutral before you have to dump more air. Care and maintenance of your buoyancy system. I'm just going to look ahead and see. Is very important. We recommend a yearly schedule at the minimum for maintaining your equipment or before any big dive trip. Your BC is no exception. All these different bits and pieces, they can fail. So these can be serviced. Your inflator can be serviced. Inflators do fail. They jam open. They jam closed. It's not great. There's ways to work around it. We'll teach you the bob and fill method for if you're out of air. But definitely maintain your equipment and take good care of it. One thing we didn't do at the pool, when we got out of the pool last night, we didn't rinse our equipment. If you ever come out of the ocean or any saltwater dive, make sure you rinse your equipment. It's very, very important. Salt destroys everything it touches. Weight of air and water. Obviously, water is heavier than air. Which one's heavier, salt water or fresh water? Salt water is heavier. We float better in salt water than we do in fresh. I'm not sure why it's got the 2, but it has the same numbers. Absolute pressure in diving. So here on the surface, we have a little bit less because we're at altitude, but if you're standing on the edge of the sea, you have an entire atmosphere of pressure pressing down on you. You have literally the weight of the atmosphere crushing you. You've just adapted. So when they say you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, you kind of do. At 33 feet of seawater, 34 feet of fresh water, you gain an entire extra atmosphere. That is the absolute most difference that you're going to have. And then, because that doubles in 34 feet, where you triple in 68 and quadruple in 102. So the place that you have to be the most careful is actually the shallowest water, because that has the greatest pressure differential to be injured as. Quiz time. Absolute pressure is defined as total pressure exerted on an object. Absolutely. Boyle's law, he has the pressure and volume corresponding. And so as pressure goes up, volume decreases, provided everything else stays the same. We can see this in balloons. We can also see this in our air tanks. We think we have a big metal tank that shouldn't be affected by the pressure. It is. and so are your lungs. And so as we go deeper, we need more air to breathe the same amount of oxygen that we would. So, just off the cuff, can anybody tell me at 66 feet how much air you're going to breathe compared to on the surface? Just from the picture. 3 times the amount. So keep that in mind when you're doing your dive planning, because, yeah.
I was going to say, the 0, 1 atmosphere, like where we are here, since we're not super high.
4,800-ish, 47.
Does that mean we're like, is it, I know that the difference.
Yes-ish. Yeah, so that's an excellent thing for the altitude diving. I was told to keep things simpler and stick to the slides, so I have to. But if Ben wants to jump on that.
Pressure. And absolutely. So at sea level, it's considered a constant 1, but it's 0.99 to 1.01, 1.02. As you rise in altitude, for example, where we're at 0.82 atmospheres. So what that does is it gives you a different theoretical depth based on the reduction of pressure at the surface. So everything we're going to talk about in this class is going to be based on sea level. And if you're absolutely interested in understanding how the atmospheric pressure affects the depth and the relative, we call it the theoretical depth, we absolutely have a great class on hours. There's no dives involved in it. It's all classroom work, but it gives you how that affects the body, how to do safety stops differently, how to make sure that you're taking into account the nitrogen rise in altitude as well. Interesting things, and you guys are learn about DCS later on. You realize DCS, or the bends, affects you when you go to higher altitude. So if you suddenly went from San Diego to Mile High Stadium in Denver and jumped off the plane and decided to go for a 5-mile run and got really winded, tired, sore from being at higher altitude, you're getting a light version of DCS. So the bends or DCS decompression sickness is exactly that. It doesn't have to do with just the water. It has to do with the reduction of decompression around you. So as you rise in altitude, you have a reduction of the partial pressure of nitrogen and the risk of getting the bends. I have a couple ideas there. But we have a great class on that. I definitely encourage, if that's something you're interested in. Love to teach it. I've got it online as well, and I can absolutely certify you in it.
So like altitude diving is like.
Anything above 1,000 feet is going to be considered an altitude.
So the fun part about diving at altitude, you actually are diving a comparative deeper than you physically are, if that makes sense. So without doing the math, I can't just throw numbers off the top of my head, but at 50 feet, you're 65, 18? Okay.
Probably.
And so your theoretical depth is deeper than your physical depth. So that does absolutely affect your air consumption. An object immersed in water will be buoyed upward by a force. Anybody know? Equal to. Yep. So the story goes, Archimedes was commissioned by the king. I think it was Archimedes. Was commissioned by the king to tell him whether the goldsmith had ripped him off, because he was having a hard time measuring the volume of gold in his crown. The king had given him a payment for a crown of a certain weight. And so he was sitting in the bathtub one day, and he realized that he was displacing water in the bathtub. And he's like, well, I wonder if I can do that with the gold. And turns out he could. And turns out the goldsmith was ripping off the king. And it was all bad for the goldsmith, but it was great for the rest of us, because we have learned that we are buoyed up by an equal amount of force to the, to the water that we displace. And so All right. What is the best way to prevent panic? Absolutely. Prepares you for things that you wouldn't be prepared for otherwise. Honestly evaluating your diving limitations, which change day by day and hour by hour, will help you be more comfortable in the water, and properly maintaining your total diving system will absolutely make you feel more comfortable. These rental rigs are taken excellent care of, but once you get your own equipment, just wait. It's night and day difference. It really is. You're like, I don't see anything wrong with these, and then you get your own rig, and it's like, oh, I understand now. Battery dying?
Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, one of the things that's interesting we talk about a lot. Yeah, there we go. Maybe it's just dying. Anyway, we talk about is buying your own gear. And I'll be honest, I was in your shoes. I'm like, you're just trying to sell me a bunch of stuff. You just want me to buy all stuff from your shop, and that's not it at all. I promise you that the statistic is if you have your own gear, you'll dive a lot more. You'll be a lot more comfortable, and you will be safer. It's the difference between all of a sudden jumping in your boss's Ferrari and trying to run the Daytona 500 versus driving whatever you dive your Ford on a regular basis. It's a very different experience, right? If the Ferrari was yours and you drove it all the time, you practiced, you'd probably be able to handle it up better. Same idea. Familiarity breeds comfort, right? So the more familiar you are with something, you know, you'll dive it more. Now the question we get asked a lot is, do you take your own gear wherever you go? And Nikki and I do not rent gear, period. We haven't rented gear. I don't think I've ever actually rented gear, to be honest with you. Nikki used to rent gear before we were married, but we take everything with us. You can get a nice suitcase. It folds in nicely. It all puts together. When you get there, it's your gear. You know how it works. Rental gear gets beat the hell out of, and it's not always comfortable to dive because it's different stuff than what you've been trained in. There are 18 major manufacturers of gear out there. We carry the Huish line, which is Hollis, Apex, Aqualung, Oceanic, Ziegel, things like that, all top brands, right? Do a fantastic job. We service all those. We warranty them here in the shop as well. When you get ready to go on your dive trip, you bring it in here. We do a complete up, down, left, and right on it to make sure it's perfect for you. So when you get out there, you're in your own gear. You're the most comfortable. It's kind of the way I like to think about it. It's kind of like the reason that Nikki and I have an RV. There is no place that I would rather sleep than in a nice pillow top mattress with my own comforter and my own feather pillows. I hate sleeping on the ground. And I hate sleeping in hotels. But when I can drag my bed with me, I will absolutely do that every single time. Same thing with dive gear. We take our own stuff. And some of the stuff we do, like when we went to Hawaii, we took 7 regulator sets and 3 BCs because we were doing 2 different kinds of diving and a lot bigger stuff. We did take 2 suitcases for that, but if we're just doing easy recreational stuff, we've got 1 suitcase as a dive suitcase. We put it in there. We take it with us. We know it works. It breathes the way we like it. It does what we want it to do, how we like it to do. It's more comfortable. And we're absolutely more safe. We're not fidgeting, trying to figure stuff out. We're enjoying the dive because it's our stuff. If you guys are interested in gear, I'd be happy to fit you up. There's definitely suggestions that I have that'll be a little different than other people, just based upon experience level of what I like to do and what I've seen and at the level of diving. So there's ideas I'll have for you that may be different than maybe David's or Brett's or Ashley's. On any one of them is going to be a great suggestion, and you'll get good time out of it. So that's my suggestion: is get your own gear. You'll definitely appreciate it more. That's for sure.
What do you do about tanks?
You rent tanks wherever you go. You rent tanks and lead. So I don't take my own weight with me, and I don't take tanks with us. The real trick, I have friends that do rebreather. That's a whole different thing because there's a lot of places where you can't rent the rebreather tank. It's a special 3-liter tank. That's a whole fun thing. But that's a whole mess down the line. To give you an idea, basic rebreather costs about $12,000 for the unit itself, and then about another $47,000 for the training. But on a 3-liter tank, that little 3-liter tank, the whole unit's lighter than what you guys are wearing. You can get at recreational levels, you can get about 6 hours of diving out of a 3-liter tank. They're reusing
But you do that, I guess, when you're.
Absolutely, it's called silent diving. And that's one of the cool things about it is because you're not making bubbles and you're not making noise, you can sneak up on fish, and you can sneak into situations that other people, photographers love it because they're able to sneak in and get better. They're not scaring things away. So it's a whole. You guys are a long way away from rebreather. It is definitely a. I'm not even in rebreather. So
Much to his chagrin.
yes, I'm working on it. We'll get there next year, but it's a whole different level. But it's cool. But get your own gear. We carry a lot of great gear here. I'm happy to recommend that stuff for you and get dialed in. Josh, you got your own gear. How did that compare to the rental gear?
I mean, I really like it. Set it up the way that you want. It's I got it's not really a
You got the LTS light travels, which by Hollis, which is a great pull it up and put it in carry on. If you take it apart right, so it travels very light, very nice. 4 pounds total. Very easy to carry with you. Durable, soft plate as well.
especially compared to just kind of like I have my everything kind of where I want it. A lot more comfortable, especially it's a lot simpler. It's just simple.
All right.
But yeah, I would definitely recommend this, especially that one.
All right. Logbook. Why is the logbook important? Absolutely. It contains important information from past dives that you can reference for future dives. What else? They're absolutely all very important. So having that record of your past dives, especially a detailed record, it's really easy to just be like, oh, I went 50 feet for 50 minutes, the end, click. But it's nice to see water temperatures. It's nice to see that kind of thing because you can go back and reference that when people are like, well, how cold was it last year? You'd be like, oh, well, let's scroll back through March of this last year. It was about this temperature. We should expect that again for this trip. So it's really important to keep good records for that. All right, effects of pressure on the surface and underwater. This is where we start getting into the dive melodies. We said we'd get there. We're finally there. So the arterial gas embolism, the mediastinal emphysema, subcutaneous emphysema, and pneumothorax. Some of those you might have heard on, I don't know, Grey's Anatomy, whatever show you prefer to watch. But these are very real conditions, and these are the 4 that will most affect you outside of the bends. These are the ones that are going to usually require hospitalization. We do have emergency kits on every trip that we take as a dive shop. We have O2 bottles. We have an O2 kit there, and every vehicle that we take to a dive trip, because the immediate response for all of these is put you on oxygen, get you to the hospital. So we carry our own oxygen, make sure we can get you on that quick, and then we get you to the hospital. Basic respiratory and circulatory anatomy. And I've got to be careful with this because I'm actually in the medical field, and so I've taken more complicated, but in a nutshell, as you breathe air in, your lungs transfer that oxygen to your blood transfers it to your body where it needs it, brings all the waste back to your lungs, and your lungs spit it back out. As you dive, that process is still happening, but the air pressures change, and they'll talk more about that if you take the Science of Diving class. But in a nutshell, the amount of oxygen available to you changes as you experience compression, which will further increase your breathing rate. So a great rule of thumb, on a really easy dive, you're going to breathe 1.5 times what you do on the surface. On an exertion dive, you're going to dive 2 times what you breathe on the surface. Easy way to tell what you're breathing on the surface: sit down, grab a tank of air, watch an episode of your favorite show, and see how much air you breathe in PSI, and then Ben can get you the formula for that, and you can actually go through and calculate the exact volumetric consumption, or you can just go off of PSI if you only ever plan on diving aluminum 80s. Your overexpansion injuries, the AGE, the MEs, the SEs, and the pneumothorax, these are all from, are usually from ascending too quickly. That's why we stress the importance of control in your ascents. Make sure you go negative before you start ascending, and then ascend slowly, because that alone will all but eliminate your chances of ever getting one of these. There it is. The arterial gas embolism, that's an air bubble in your arterial vessels. So in any of your arteries, you can have a gas embolism. The mediastinal emphysema is in your lungs. The subcutaneous emphysema is beneath your skin, and the pneumothorax is another lung injury. You don't want any of these. You don't want to experience any of these. All of these are incredibly painful and uncomfortable. Overexpansion injuries can be prevented by all of them. So never, ever, ever hold your breath while diving. I know Ben said it's fun to sneak up on fish. That's great, as long as you don't go up or down at all. Who remembers from Tuesday how many feet it takes to have an overexpansion injury? 4 feet. That's all it takes. How easy is it to travel 4 feet in a pool? Pretty easy. How easy is that in a great big lake where you can't see the sides? Trust me, it's a lot easier. Learning correct breathing patterns, reinforcing them in the classroom, in the pool, and open water training. We teach you how to breathe. How do we teach you to breathe? Continuously. Always and forever. Breathe continuously. Dive with a properly maintained, high-quality total diving system. We stress it not because we make money off of service, but because that keeps you alive. It really is important to maintain your gear. This isn't like your car where you're like, oh, I can get a couple more miles out of that oil change. This is your life. You break down on the side of the road, oh darn, you're going to be late to class. If you break down at the bottom of the lake, it's a lot more of an issue. So please, please, please maintain your equipment. Absolutely. Yep. So. Yeah. Air bubbles in hydraulic systems shut hydraulic systems down. And so even if it doesn't make it as far as your brain, it could shut down whatever appendage it does end up in. And so, overexpansion injuries and prevention. Your prevention is as easy as always breathe and ascend slowly, maintain control. If you do those 3 things, you will almost never risk an overexpansion injury. If you do have an overexpansion injury, or you see somebody who has what you could think is an overexpansion injury, again, we have O2 bottles. We take them on every dive that we do as a shop. Ben takes it on every dive he does personally. So if you ever do a dive along with Ben, he's got a full first aid kit, and he includes an O2 bottle. I think you have 2 O2 bottles now, right? Okay.
I've got enough for 1 diver for 2 hours or 2 divers.
So it's as easy as getting you on oxygen, getting you to the hospital, but we'd rather not have to deal with that. That's the just in case. Ben just covered this. Most serious overexpansion injury is the arterial gas embolism. Absolutely. Uh, the decompression sickness, they call it caisson's disease because originally those big diving bells were called caissons, and they didn't really know what it was or why it happened, but they knew as soon as you came out of the caisson, a lot of times you would get the bends. Oh, they used them for most underwater diving, especially building bridges, construction sites, that kind of thing. So these guys were down in the water for, 8, 10, 12 hours at a time, depending on how big of a hurry the boss was in. And so these guys would go straight down, do their work all day, come straight up, and they didn't know any better. And so all they knew was that people were getting sick, and eventually we did find out the physics of it. And this is what we were talking about with the different levels of different amounts of oxygen available. Normal air that we breathe is 79% oxygen, 21%, 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. And so that's just your normal air. At double the pressure, that actually goes up to 1.58 nitrogen and 0.42 on oxygen. And so your partial pressures of the gases change proportionate to the absolute pressure that you're experiencing. And we've talked a lot about nitrox, safer, longer, more energy, all that. EAN 32 is 32% oxygen. So on the surface, you're breathing 32% oxygen, and at 2 bar, you have less nitrogen than you would of normal air. The oxygen doesn't matter as much as the less nitrogen because it's actually the nitrogen coming out of your tissues that cause the bends. So, fun fact. And once you take science of diving, you'll understand a lot more about that. Once you start getting into deep diving, you'll definitely want to take that because it turns out oxygen can poison you. You have too much oxygen in you. With air at 1 atmosphere, the partial pressure of nitrogen and oxygen are A, 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. The most efficient breathing pattern for scuba diving is a balanced deep inhalation followed by a long balanced exhalation without any pause. It's very important. We do not hold our breath. Decompression sickness. Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about decompression sickness for just a little bit and get a better understanding of this. So back in the early 1900s, there was a guy, his name was Haldane, and he started figuring out this idea that at the Brooklyn Bridge, when they started bringing people up, that they started getting the bends out of these caissons. They would literally come up and they would double over in pain. That's why they called the bends. They would be in such pain. But they realized that as they sent them back down, all the pain and the sickness went away. So their brilliant idea at the time, initially, before Haldane came along, was to, well, just make them work longer shifts because they're in pain, right? Sounds like a reasonable thing to do. What they were doing is becoming an aquanaut. Anybody heard that term before, aquanaut? You know what it means? I didn't know either, to be honest with you. I just looked it up the other day. I have a friend that's her logo is the aquanaut, right? So as you go through, what aquanaut means is you stay down for a period of time sufficient enough to be completely at equilibrium with the depth that you're at. Typically, that's a 24-hour period. So anybody that's been pressurized, submariners don't count, but in sea labs or deep divers, when they stay for a period of 24 hours at pressure, equalized, they consider them to be an aquanaut. So that's the physical definition. So anyway, back in the 1900s or the 1800s, 1900s, Haldane came along and says, wait a minute, there's something going on here. It's a little wacky. We've got a problem here. And he was a scientist, and he started figuring out it was the nitrogen. Nitrogen is the main precluding factor for all the diving you guys are going to do. You guys are not going to get to the point where you're going to have to worry about oxygen toxicity until you get way farther down the line and start getting the kind of diving that I do. then I have to start working about oxygen toxicity, but that's pretty far out there. So, but this initial diving, they discovered that the nitrogen was a problem. And so he started studying this, and he came up with the idea that, wait a minute, when we get to a 2-to-1 ratio, when we get to the point where we double the nitrogen, that's when we have a problem. And that's when it saturates enough that when it starts desaturating or diffusing, the correct terms are when it perfuses, nitrogen perfuses into the tissues, and when it starts diffusing and coming out, that's when it becomes a problem. And when he decided it was a 2-to-1 ratio. Well, interestingly enough, he was right, but he was wrong at the same time. And later on in the 50s, Robert Workman came along and he says, dude, you were so close, man. You were almost there. And he came up with what he considered the Workman's critical difference. And what that basically said is when you get to the point where you're twice the amount of nitrogen, not just twice the pressure, but twice the amount of nitrogen. So let's look at that for a moment. As we dive down and we're just diving air, twice the pressure of nitrogen is at 2 bar. But wait a minute, what happens if we're diving nitrox instead, or a different blend of air or oxygen? We're still not getting to that 158% at 2 bar. We're getting only to 136%. So when nitrogen gets past 2 times the surface pressure of air is when it becomes a problem. That's one of the reasons nitrox is so nice, because you can actually dive deeper and have less residual nitrogen build up in your system. You uptake less nitrogen. So that's the deal with the Workman's critical difference. So decompression sickness is basically an idea of, as I'm decompressing, I'm coming up out of a different partial pressure and reducing the partial pressure of nitrogen. Nitrogen being the precluding factor of most diving, right? Or the limiting factor, I should say, not precluding, but the limiting factor of most diving. So as we start coming up, you can absolutely, altitude sickness is a form of DCS. Most people just don't realize it or put 2 and 2 together, right? So decompression sickness is when we have a higher release of nitrogen than what we'd like to have happen. So as this nitrogen is coming out of our system, what I want you guys to think about is all your tissues are kind of like sponges, right? As the nitrogen being the water, as you get in their water, it starts to absorb that up. It's got to come out at some point, right? That's when we squeeze it and it comes out. Well, when it comes out, it doesn't come out the same way it went in. It starts coming out as bubbles. It starts out as silent bubbles, where it starts out as bubble seeds, and then to silent bubbles, and then to dangerous bubbles as well. And what it looks like is if this was full of Coke. I'll borrow your water bottle here for a second, right? If we had put Coca-Cola or Sprite or Pepsi, whatever your soft drink of choice is, and we start coming up in the water column, it'd be the same as shaking the crap out of it. Now we've got all these bubbles. Now what do we do with it? We've got to let the bubbles out somehow. Well, if we come up slowly enough, we could. Oh, good, perfect. So we just let it out. There you go. Perfect. It actually it bubbles out very gently if we let it out. If I just popped it off, it got everywhere, right? And that's the idea of ascending slowly in the water column. It's taking that cap off very slowly so those bubbles don't get all over my new clean white shirt, right? That's what you want to think about. So that's the idea of decompression, and we want to make sure we're allowing those bubbles to come out of our tissues slowly enough where they don't become a problem. Like I said, they start off as bubble seeds, very small, and as the tension grows, they start to grow and they become silent bubbles, and then from silent bubbles, they become dangerous bubbles. And they provide a lot of the same idea as an AGE, bubbles in the system. It's just the difference between AGE and decompression sickness is where the bubbles are coming from and the gas in the bubbles. After that, it's still bubbles in the system, it's bad. So the first sign and symptom, the most common form of DCS is the skin bends. What's happening is that nitrogen's trying to go somewhere. It needs to go somewhere, but it's small enough that it's able to perfuse through the skin. And so you'll start to get a rash. Now, not all rashes are certainly DCS, but certainly be aware of, as you start to get weird rashes in larger spaces, something ain't right? But that's DCS level 1. DCS level 2 is where the bubbles get too large to perfuse through the skin, and they start becoming problematic, and they start getting trapped in joints. So you start getting joint pain, soreness in the muscles. Now, interesting thing, the soreness in the muscles is just like when you're getting a cold. right? So the idea is what's happening is all of a sudden you're introducing a foreign body into the bloodstream and into your body that shouldn't be there. The white blood cells are saying, wait, you ain't supposed to be here. And they go to war. And as anybody who's been in war tells you, it's not good for anything, right? Whoever sang that, right? War. What's it good for? Nothing, right? So it causes pain and problems. It causes pain and problem in your body. The white blood cells are actually fighting against those bubbles because it's a foreign invader. They don't know what to do with it, right? It also gets trapped into your joints. It causes joint pain. It can get large enough that it causes enough joint pain that you'll double over in pain. That's all in DCS level 2. DCS level 3 is where it starts getting really dangerous. Where it starts blocking blood vessels, blood cells, and you start going numb, dizziness, vertigo, major pain, tingling in the extremities, nausea, narrowness of vision. Any of those things, now you're just a fairly serious, because we've broken where the bubbles are, and they've gone up into the cognitive areas, right? And they're starting to cause major problems. So those are the signs and symptoms. What's the prevention of it? Very simple. Ascend slowly. Do your safety stops. Take your time. This is a slow sport. The treatment for it. Now, I've heard this said before. If somebody starts getting DCS, they want to recompress them underwater. Bad idea. How well do you want to? Would you like to use an AID out me in the pool? Let's hop in the pool, you and I together, and we'll use an AED together. Does that sound like fun? No, it's a bad idea, right? So what you're doing is you're taking a patient or somebody that's exhibiting a distressed signals and putting them underwater in a situation where you can't control things. Where if they do go into cardiac arrest, CPR or an AED is not an option at this point. So you're introducing a second set of problems. So the things you want to do is decompression sickness, lay them on their back. Get them to relax. Get them drinking water. Monitor their ABCs. Get them on pure O immediately. It's pure oxygen. If you can get them on pure oxygen immediately, it'll help flush that nitrogen out, because it won't allow, it's not that it's flushing nitrogen out. More accurately, what it's not doing is not allowing additional nitrogen to come in. It's the idea of, if I have a pitcher of water that has 50% Kool-Aid in it, 50% water in it, if I keep pouring Kool-Aid and water into the thing, it never goes away. But if I just start pouring just pure water into it, eventually the Kool-Aid goes away, right? So I'm not introducing more nitrogen in the system, but I'm allowing the nitrogen that's there to continue to process off more accurately. So that's the basic treatment for it, and how we work through this process is pure oxygen. Now, here's the good news. AGE, subcutaneous emphysema, neothorax, arterial gas embolism, DCS. If you can get to treatment to a recompression chamber within 4.5 hours, you have a 98% of 100% recovery. So, simple enough. Relax them. Basically, you're going to treat a DCS patient like they're shock, right? Hydrate. Monitor the ABCs. Get them relaxing, because the last thing you want them to do, you want to lay them down and get them relaxing. The last thing you want them to do is moving around or causing any additional stress on the heart that's going to raise the heartbeat up even more. At this point, if they're exhibiting signs and they're at that point, they're already going to do that all by themselves. What we want to do is try and get them relaxed, talk smoothing to them, get them calmed down. The brain is the #1 thing, period, that will get your heart racing. Anybody ever been to a haunted house and felt your heart go a little bit? Yeah. Fun story for you. We know Alice Cooper pretty well. When we lived in Phoenix, he invited us to his new haunted house, my kids and I, as a test. We were one of his test families, and he wanted to tell us what we thought. My kids were little, and I'm like, my kids are too little for this. And so he's like, no, come, it'll be great. We'll give them these glow sticks, and if something gets scary, they point the glow stick at it and go bang, and the ghost goes away. And I'm like, oh, he's kind of a scary dude anyway. But we get into this. We get about a third of the way in, and we're scared crapless, because stuff comes out of the floor, out of the ceiling, out of the walls. I mean, it's coming from you. And it's Hollywood quality. And we finally get to this last room, and I mean, we're not moving fast. It's just everything's around us, scaring us, and our hearts are like this. And we're in this long room, probably from here to that wall back there. And there's a mannequin sitting in this one chair. That's all that's in this room. And my kids are scared fartless. I mean, they're just terrified. Oh my God, oh my God. And I'm like, don't worry, it's just a mannequin. And they're like, ah. They got their magic sticks, right? And I walk down. I'm like, look, it's just a mannequin. I poked it. I started to walk away, and it stood up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder. I have never come closer to crap my pants in all my life, because I literally, when he tapped, I turned around and it was standing behind me. I fell on the ground. I was like, oh, crap. And I was like, I caught my breath and realized that it was somebody in a thing. I'm like, how the hell did you get out of this place? But the point is we didn't have a lot of physical activity involved with this, right? There was no running fast. We weren't running from anything. There was nowhere to run. It was dark. We couldn't see where the hell we were going. It was all up here, right? And so the more you can calm your mind during diving and emergency situations, the better off you're going to be. I tell in stress and rescue that the difference between you and the victim is the attitude that you take into the situation. The better the attitude, the better off you're going to be. Make sense? Absolutely. And one of the things you guys will see from me, here's your first trick and tip on getting really good SAC rate, your surface air consumption, how fast you go through your gas. What I'll do, and David's seen me do this numerous times, is we'll swim out to where we're getting ready to drop in, and I'll stop you guys, and I'll do this, and this is my little Zen symbol. And what I want you to do is, the first thing we do is we calm our mind. We realize Benjamin's with us, and if anything happens, he's going to drag our ass out of the water. We're going to be just fine. No big deal. Relax your mind. There's no sharks here. Nothing's going to eat us. The lake, right? What's really going to happen? Relax your mind. Let whatever's going on at work, let that be at work, right? This is diving. Lake time is relaxing time. Get your mind right. Once you get your mind right, the next thing is get your breathing right. Calm that down. Get your breathing correct. Once you get your breathing correct, get your body right. Just, and you'll see me do it. Oh, yeah. Get that relaxing. If you can do those three things before you descend, you'll go through a crap load less air. And then David has seen me do this as well. As once we're all good to go, we're zen, good, okay. We descend, we get down to our initial depth, stop, zen again. So once we've gotten down, we're at the pressure point. Again, get your mind right. Nothing's going to eat me. Got plenty of air. Good to go. Get your breathing right. Relax it. Get your body right. Oh, yeah. And then go for your dive. If you do that one thing, you find your zen of mind, breath, body, you'll have such better dives. They will be, I promise you, 1,000% better. And the same thing with this, with going through and treating any of these. Stop for a second. Get your mind right. I've got control of the situation. Get your breathing under control. Relax your body. Let's go into the situation. You'll be a lot better off. So, which of the following would be inappropriate treatment for a diver exhibiting symptoms of decompression sickness? We may have just talked about this. A is exactly right. Do not take them back underwater. Although you can take, if you do take them back underwater, take the AED with you. Just kidding. Don't do that. The proper ascent techniques. Simple enough. You ready to take over?
All right. From yesterday, who can tell me what the proper ascent rate is? Oh, you're doing your homework in meters. 33 feet. Yep. Are you doing 33 feet? Yep. 33 feet per minute. 9 meters is correct. You're right. That's just international. So, yeah. There's that little problem where the entire rest of the world uses metric. So, I mean, at least you'll fit in really well in the international dives, but a proper ascent, first thing you're going to do, grab your inflator hose, lift it high above your head. Why do we lift it high above our head? 2 reasons. We talked about it yesterday. Get the bubbles up, because air rises. What's the second one? Protect your head. Absolutely. We want to hit anything that's above us, because you don't want to sit there knocking your head against your tank valve the entire time. We want to hit anything that's above us with our hand long before we hit it with our head. So, proper ascent, grab your inflator, lift it high above your head, go slightly negative, and start swimming up. It's called a swimming ascent because we swim. A lot of people want to use that inflator button like an elevator. That's not the best way to do that. Nitrogen narcosis. This is a really fun thing. Everybody's probably heard of the narco part of narcosis, but you've probably heard narcotic. substances, right? Talk about it in the news a lot, all sorts of narcotics going on. Even here in Idaho, we're not immune from that. A fun thing about diving, the deeper you get, the nitrogen in your body will actually form a narcotic effect inside of you. And so the shallowest recorded narcosis was at 60 feet. Is that right? So as
The question becomes, how is narcosis is 60 feet? What depth are we certifying you guys?
60 feet.
Isn't that a coincidence to you? Maybe it's planned.
So if you want to experience the narcotic effect, absolutely take the deep diving class. Ben will have great fun torturing you while you're under the influence of nitrogen, which is not a very common thing to say, but it's a whole lot of fun. Also, do you have the video on these slides for that? Oh, good. So here's some things that'll happen when you experience narcosis.
Diving is the effects of narcosis. It's like being drunk underwater, but you don't get any of it. Some divers get narcs easier than others. It just depends on how deep you go, how susceptible you are to the cause of the nitrogen system. Now, as you all probably know, some people do pretty stupid stuff drunk. All you have to do is visit your local drunk tank at the police station on a Friday night and ask what they're in for. Or if you're the one in the drunk tank, the cops will tell you why you're there. But people do stupid stuff when narcs, and most people don't even know they're narcs. So it can be useful to understand some telltale signs that your buddy is narcs, so that you can be the designated diver and look after them and get. And such heart, I'm Mark, and here are 5 ways to tell if your dive buddy is narcs. They keep staring at themselves in your eye. You're drugs by the gas that you are breathing the deeper you go, and such your inhibitions are lessened. As we know, we are all narcissists at heart when we lose our inhibitions, aren't we? I mean, let's face it, I'll bet you anything that your social media picture is you. Not women are like magpies, and they objects. And when they look at you, they're probably not actually looking and engaging with you, just looking at themselves or the mirror copy of themselves from the mirror dimension, the shiny lens. Find them buddy breathing with a fish. I've actually heard this a couple of times, and this is the other front. These individuals will be concerned at all of the fish in the water and their lack of breathing apparatus. After all, they've spent a lot of time learning how important their regulators are and to always keep breathing. But they'll often think their regulators for these fish that, to be honest, they wave back at fish. Hey, buddy, the third type of drunk is the who is observant and sees this crowd and the fishes and all their little fins waving at them. So it would be rude not to wave back, right? Yeah, if your buddy is waving back at the fish, they're probably not. Or, wave. Fish are cool and they move their pectorals pretty much all the time, but while they are aware that you are their they're masked frogs underwater, and they, much like people who default the outside of their mask before a dive, you aren't going to get much benefit of spitting in your dive. I've seen this before, and it was a dive guide, so I really hope he wasn't nuts at the time. Your mask fogs up, and he spits your mask. Yeah, enough said. Considerate of them, but stay away from my mask. Person. So what have you seen in the wild, rare underwater species, homo narcosis?
That's side note.
And let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. flying dive, serving the UK and the world for all your diving. But why not leave us?
All right. So that's a few signs that your buddy's narked. I've actually got a story of narcosis. I got water in one ear while I was narked, and I just sat there and swam in a circle because I felt like I was circling. And so I sat there trying to count into the circle, and I just sat there swimming in a circle over and over again. And I knew I was swimming in a circle, but I couldn't stop swimming in a circle because I only had water in one ear, so I felt unbalanced. And I just sat there swimming in a circle and couldn't stop until everybody else swam away, and I swam with them. And finally got water in that other ear and balanced out. So, respect your limits, stay within your training. Unless you've taken that deep diving class, don't go below 60 feet. It is a lot of fun. There's a ton of stuff down there. Just take the class first. Oxygen toxicity, we talked about this a little bit. Oxygen actually does become poisonous at a certain point. And that point can very easily be reached in diving in your nitrox class that you take next week. You'll learn a lot about this, so I won't cover it too in depth tonight. But suffice it to say that you do not want to overdose on oxygen. It's pretty bad. Carbon dioxide buildup, hypercapnia. This can happen from skip breathing, from breathing irregularly, breathing in really heavy and not breathing out sufficiently. That's why we say a balanced even inhale followed by a balanced even exhale. Keep it balanced, blow out all that carbon dioxide. Don't sit there and go trying to maintain your buoyancy. It'll come with comfort. Just breathe regularly. It will all come in time. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Remember the first thing we did when we grabbed our tanks yesterday? What was it? Crack the valves and smell it. Here we have an electric pump, but that's still a great habit to get into because when you're diving off of a boat, diving out in third world country, they're filling their tanks up off of a diesel pump. If the intake and the exhaust are too close to each other, if the wind's blowing the wrong direction, blowing the exhaust right across the intake valve, you don't want to be sucking on diesel fumes the entire time you're down there. It's not fun. You can get carbon monoxide poisoning. Sniff your air. Carbon monoxide poisoning treatment, obviously, we want to get you on oxygen as soon as possible, flush that out of our system, and get you to the hospital. Proper dive planning procedures. So, have you gotten to the point in your homework where it's talked about the dive tables? You guys seen those, heard those? No? Okay. Well, we are going to talk about that tonight. So all of our diving is off the recreational dive tables within the no decompression limit, the NDL, and we build a dive profile for the dives that we are planning. So again, another plug for nitrox. And we've talked about that enough. I think that, so, yeah, if you want to do this part.
All right. What do you guys think so far? We got through this. We got through what I consider the scary part, the bad things that happen during diving, right? The good news is diving is a very safe sport. It's somewhere north of table tennis and south of skydiving. So you're pretty safe scuba diving. There's built into a safety margin. So in the 50s, we had to come up with a dive table. And the Navy went to Scripps and they went to Workman, and they said, we need a dive table because we're got too many of our divers getting sick and having problems. And they said, okay, give us some idea. What are you looking for here? What do you need to happen? And they said, well, we need them to be able to go down and do something. And they said, okay, what's the minimum amount of time that you consider being able to do something, right? And they said, well, the minimum amount of time would be 5 minutes. Okay, we can work with that. And they said, wait a minute. What about depth? How deep can they go for this 5 minutes? They said, well, you can go to 140 feet for this time. Well, they realized they were pretty smart. The Navy actually had a pretty sharp little moment here. They said, wait a minute, if I can go to 140 feet for 5 minutes, I am dealing with 18-year-old kids straight out of high school that are all full of testosterone, running 5 miles every day. How smart were either you or I when we were 18? Guys are not smart to start with. We're less smart at 18. So they realized, it said, wait a minute, if we tell these guys they can stay down for 5 minutes, they're going to stay down for 10 minutes. And if we tell them they can go to 140 feet, they're going to go to 150 feet. So let's back that up and let's add some safety margin. So let's tell them they can go to 130 feet for 5 minutes. That way, if they go down and they hit 140 feet for 5 minutes, we're still good to go. We've got an extra safety margin in there. They built a pretty substantial safety margin. So as we look at this, typically for your average person who's in reasonable shape, that doesn't smoke and eat donuts all day long, is not 500 pounds, there's about a 30 to 40% safety margin built into this. So as we look at this, realize that it's designed around safety. It's designed around the least common denominator person, the person who does smoke 3 cigars a day and eat a box of Krispy Kreme, right? That's what it's designed for. We're all in reasonable shape. At least you guys are. I'm a little on the chubby side. So I have a less safety margin here than you. But we started looking at this. And the key areas we're going to look at is going to be air. As you guys go through the nitrox class, we'll understand these as well. But I would like to point out a couple of interesting things just about nitroxes on there. If we do a dive to 60 feet on air, our maximum time is 50 minutes. If we do that same dive to 57 feet, 3 feet difference, on 36% nitrox, we can stay down for 130 minutes. Slight difference? So when I told you guys earlier that diving nitrox allows you to dive longer, there's your proof in the pudding. I'm not just blowing funny smoke and saying, nitrox is for geezers, it's fun, you feel good. It actually does give you more bottom time. But for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we're going to talk about just 21% air. And then we're going to talk about this first column, which is the Doppler limit. So as we look at this, we can start noticing something happening. Michelle, what do you notice as we get deeper? Yeah, we get less time, right? So we're uptaking more nitrogen, so we get less bottom time. So not only do we go through gas faster as we go deeper because it's denser, but we're also uptaking nitrogen a lot faster, so we get less time as we go through. So this is the important line to look at, is that as we look through this, we've got your total time. Now we can go over, we can start to get a basic idea, and we can start figuring out what our residual nitrogen point is going to be. And that's going to put us into a letter group. Obviously, the closer to A we are, the less residual nitrogen we have. The closer to K, the more residual nitrogen time we have. And with residual nitrogen, when we come out, it just means we need to spend more time at the surface to allow the nitrogen to naturally flow out of our systems before we do our next dive. Because the more nitrogen we have going into a dive, the less our second dive and our third dive or repetitive dive will be. Make sense so far? Follow me? Good. Easy enough. So how we figure this out is pretty simple. We say I go down to 60 feet to do my dive, and if I stay down for 30 minutes, that makes me an F group diver. If I go to 25 feet and I stay down for 245 minutes, which is a long freaking dive, I'm an I group diver, which means my residual nitrogen. So let's get a few terms out of the way first before we go too much further into this. Does anybody need this, or did everybody get their calendar invites? Did you get calendar invites? Cool. We shouldn't need that any longer. A couple of key terms that we need to be aware of as we go through this process. I'm going to draw this out. The first one is going to be bottom time. Bottom time is measured from the beginning of the direct descent to the beginning of the direct ascent. Make sense? So that's how we measure our bottom time. So the minute I start descending in the water column to get to my pretty reef, cool coral shrimp, whatever I'm going after, to the point where my dive, I'm ready to end and I'm ready to ascend, is considered my bottom time. or my BT. The beginning of my direct descent, the beginning of my direct ascent. Next one is going to be surface interval. Surface interval. All right, I'm trimming my teeth. That's not good. That's supposed to be an S, I promise you. There we go, it looks more like an S. Surface interval is the amount of time out of the water between dives. Now, a minimum surface interval is 10 minutes. If you are not out of the water for more than 10 minutes and you start another dive, it's a continuation of the same dive. A surface interval, minimum surface interval is 10 minutes. All right, guys. Trim's getting me. So that's our surface interval. The next term we're going to talk about is the residual nitrogen, the RN. The residual nitrogen is the amount of nitrogen left in your body after you ascend from your dive. Now, we've talked about this, or it's in your homework, but one of the things that after your last dive, you have to wait for 24 hours. Has anybody read that? Before you fly? The reason being is you still have residual nitrogen in your system. That 24-hour period gives your body the time to off-gas all that residual nitrogen. Perfect. Now, how long does it take before you're considered on a new dive day, though? How long is your surface interval? We know a minimum for our surface interval is 10 minutes. But how long before I consider it a whole brand new day of diving? Very good. Somebody read the homework. 12 hours. Makes a new dive day. Okay. So we're going to talk about this for a little bit. Actual time, residual nitrogen time, total time. We add the first two to get the third. Simple enough? So, as we look at this, you and I, we've all decided to go, we're on a dive boat together, and we're going out diving and having a good time, and we've decided to do a 60-foot dive for 30 minutes. Okay. First dive of the day. Easy enough? So, what is our actual dive time on this? 30 minutes, right? Okay. How much residual nitrogen will we have on dive 1? What do you think? How much residual nitrogen would you think you'll have, though, on dive 1? Would 0 be a right answer? Exactly, and I want them to think about it. But so the idea is on dive 1, you can't have residual nitrogen. If it's your first dive of the day, you're at 0, right? So if we add those two, we do a 30-minute dive, we have 0 residual nitrogen time. Our total time is 30 minutes. Now, all we have to do is go over our chart. We're doing a 60-foot dive for 30 minutes. Makes us an F group diver, over, down, right? So we come out of the surface as an F group diver. Now the magic question is, how long do we have to stay out of the water? We know we're an F group diver right here. This is chart 2, and this is in your materials on the SSI, my SSI app. I'm not doing so well today. I'm trying to get it all the way down there. There we go. So we came out of the water as an F group diver. Now if I stay out of the water for 10 minutes, or more, but less than 45 minutes, I will remain an F group diver. But maybe I want to be a little safer. Maybe that's not enough time. Maybe I want to have a ham sandwich with my wife and talked about the previous dive. So if we stayed out of the water for 2 hours, for example, between 1 hour and 30 minutes and 2 hours and 20 minutes would be 2 hours, right? Makes us a D group diver. Okay, and that's how we find that out. Because we come down, we figure out whatever group diver we were, we just come straight down. I'm an F group diver, work my way across, and however long I stay out, if I stay out for 2 hours and a half, makes me a C group diver. Make sense? Okay. Easy enough. So now I'm a C group diver because I stayed out for 2 hours. Okay. Was that a D group diver? I'm sorry. All right, so if I was F group diver, I stayed out for 2 hours. I'm a D group diver. And if you guys would, pull your cell phones out. They're on here, but I want you guys to find it in your app. We'll just close out of this. Let's see, yes. And then I'd never used droids, so I think we have to click on that. Home, courses, more. Here we go. Let's see. Tables. And you are looking for, there we go. And did we get it in, nope, we got it in metrics. So let's be nice and scroll over to French for you to make it more, I'm just kidding. Let's try it in English, or in Imperial. There we go, you're in Imperial. So there you go. So it's all in your app. So now you guys are looking at the same thing I'm looking at. Easy enough? So as a D group diver, I need to figure out what my next dive can be. What can I do? So we're going to go to chart 3. This is the residual nitrogen chart. Okay, we know we're a D group diver, and if you guys look at it and notice in chart 3, we have 2 lines. We have a green line and a white line. The easiest way to remember this is the white numbers are your penalty. This is the time you're in penalty for the previous dive. This is how much residual nitrogen time or how much dive time you already have before you enter the water based upon the amount of nitrogen that's already in your system. Okay? The green is go, white is penalty. So we know we're a D group diver, and I want to do a dive to 50 feet because we always do our deepest dive first, and then because we don't want to do what's called a reverse profile, we profile level, so we do our deepest dive first, and then we go shallower and shallower and shallower so that we stay safe. Okay? So we're going to do our second dive to 50 feet. So as a D group diver, all we need to do is pop down from D straight down to 50 feet, and it tells us we can do a 41-foot dive, or 41-minute dive, I'm sorry. So art. So we can do a 41-minute dive. How much residual nitrogen is in, what's the number in the white? 29. That's our residual nitrogen time. We add those two together, and what do we get? 70 is exactly right. Now here's what I'd like you to do is go back to chart 1, look at 50 feet, and what is the maximum amount of time at 50 feet? Coincidence? It's like the Twilight Zone. It's amazing. They'll all match up. We can only stay down for a specific amount of time. There's only so much nitrogen that we can take on. Now what we're looking at in chart 3 is it's giving us the idea of how much nitrogen we still have in our system left over from the previous dive. So we're taking a penalty for a previous dive. It's how much time we've already considered that we're diving. Now you can really quickly see Well, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be better to stay out of the water for a little bit longer? Yes, it makes your dive safer. So simple enough. We're going to go through this process again, and we're going to start it all over again. So at 50 feet for 70 minutes, what letter group are we in now? And you're going to go back to chart 1 to figure that out. 50 feet for 70 minutes makes us a what group diver? Everybody agree with I? I group diver is exactly right. So it's dive number, we're getting ready to go to dive number 3. We go back on the boat back to the resort. We get a pina colada, virgin of course, because we never drink and dive. And Nikki will tell you that I can knock the heck out of a virgin pina colada. It's almost sickening how many of those things I will knock through. I love virgin pina coladas. I don't drink. So we spend 3 hours. So if I'm an I group diver and we spend 3 hours having some lunch, drinking a bunch of pina coladas, talking about shrimp and fish and turtles and sharks and lions and tigers and bears, oh my, what is my new letter group? Three hours. Tres horas. Sure. We're coming out as an I group diver for 3 hours. So I group diver for 3 hours. So find I and then work your way to the left. It'll be between 2 hours and 45 minutes. So what group diver are we? D is exactly right. We stayed out for 3 hours. Now we are a D group diver. I'll make it look like a D. All right, guys. So we're going to go to see some pretty corals, pretty fish. We're going to do our third dive. My question to you is, we're going to do another. We're going to push ourselves a little bit. We're going to do another 50-foot dive. It's not deeper than the last dive, and let's do it for 80 minutes. Can I do that dive? As an I group diver, as a D group diver, thank you. Can I stay down for 80 minutes at 50 feet? No. What's the maximum time I can stay down as a D group diver at 50 feet? 41 minutes is exactly right. So I can't do that dive. Maximum is 41 minutes. So 41 minutes. So we go back to art. And we're down for 41 minutes. 49 minutes of residual nitrogen time. We're doing a dive to 70 feet. So 50 feet, it's going to be exactly the same. We're going to come out of the water as an I group diver. Make sense?
Yeah, so question for you. So that does this take into account, or how do you account for your let's say you take longer?
It doesn't take that into account, and here's why. That's a great question. Let's take a look here. Oh, good. I didn't delete. Come on. Give me 1 second, and I will show you exactly why that doesn't take into account. I have done a lot of stuff today. Deleted a lot of stuff. Let's see. There we go. It is, but here's why. Sorry, I didn't mean to reach above you there, Michelle. This is an actual dive that I did not long ago. At what point on this chart is it square or rectangular or has a straight line other than my reference line that I have there? The white, fair enough. The white line is depth. The pink line is gas pressure, density of gas, in case you're wondering, and the blue line is temperature. It was very cold. So the only line we're looking at is this white line. That was my actual dive. Hmm? 127 feet, 128 feet. So it took me some time to get there. And then it took me some time to get back. I kind of kicked along, kicked along, kicked along, kicked along. No square, right? So as we do our basic dive planning, we're working on it based upon a square profile. At no point will you ever dive a square profile. Now here's your argument for buying your own dive computer. The thing about it is because I didn't dive a square profile, I got credit, extra credit for all the space in here. If I'd had to put this on a chart, this was a 48-minute dive. So let's just plot it on the charts. Does this add? Could I do this dive as a first dive, second dive, any dive of the day? I was at 129 feet was my total depth. And I would have counted that as, we'll just be gentle. We'll say 40, well, we'll say 35 minutes. 35 minutes of actual time. So my total time was 35 minutes before I started my direct ascent. Can you guys do that dive? Go back to your charts. Could you do that dive? Absolutely. How far out of standard am I on that? And this was an air dive, by the way. This is just 21%. Yeah, you're way out. But the reason I was able to get credit, now this was a deco dive, but it wasn't by much. The reason being is, think about this kind of like a teacup, right? If I just use a square container like this, it's going to hold 5 liters of water, whatever it is, right? Whereas this will hold maybe like 3 liters of water, right? So if you think about it as nitrogen, this is, 5 liters of nitrogen, and this is only 3 liters of nitrogen. So I'm not uptaking as much nitrogen because I'm getting credit for all this space in around here. So that's what a dive computer does for you, is it monitors the amount of nitrogen based upon the depth that you're diving and the time. And it gives you credit for all the time that you're not actually at depth. In basic dive planning, we absolutely look at it and say, wait a minute, I can only go to 130 feet on air for 5 minutes. But in truth, do I really stay at the 130 feet for the whole 5 minutes? No. I go down, I spend 4 or 5 minutes there, and then I start my, at about the 4-minute mark, 5-minute mark, I start my ascent, and I'm going up in the water column, and I get credit for all that shallower depth. So that's kind of the cool thing with a dive computer. I think it's probably one of the most important pieces of kit you could possibly get. Now, the next question that, thank you, Michelle, for asking that, by the way. I'm really impressed that you thought about that. What kind of dive computer should you get and how much should you spend? Here's my suggestion. It is cheaper to buy the nicest dive computer that you can afford plus 20%, I promise you, than in a year realize that you bought an entry-level computer that you've outgrown and buy a second one. I did that. Nikki did that. I bought another one for Nikki for her birthday because they had a sale on it that we ended up selling off at a substantial loss and getting her another one. So we've gone through, on my teaching rig, I've got a basic dive computer that I spent about $650 on. What did you pay for your i550? What? Yeah. I bet she paid $500, $600 for that. So say $600. So she's paid $600 for her computer that she only uses for teaching now. And then I bought her an Eon, a nicer computer with a pod that I paid $1,200 for. So, and then we don't use either of those computers really. So that was $1,200 plus $600, so $1,800 worth of stuff. And the new dive computer she does dive, I paid $850 for. So, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, with pod, so 12, say $1,300. So I paid $1,300 with the pod. So $1,300 of actual computer that we use and we'll use till it dies and $1,800 of pure waste. So when I say buy the nicest computer and add 20% to whatever that budget is, it really comes down to good cost savings. You will save money. So that's your key is buy the nicest computer, and you don't have to buy a tech computer if you don't think you'll ever go to tech. That's fine, but definitely get the nicest computer you can afford plus 20%, because I promise you, if you just buy the very, very, very basic computer, you will outgrow it. And you will. I've seen it happen so many times to this dive shop. It is absolutely a cost savings to buy a nicer computer. So let's do a couple scenarios, guys. You guys are in charge of this dive. I'm along for the ride. How deep do you want to go on your first dive? Let's do a 60-foot dive. I'm game. What are you hoping to see on the 60-foot dive? What are you hoping to see on your 60-foot dive? Sea turtle? Sweet. I can't draw a sea turtle. Well, maybe he looks like. That's my sea turtle. Those are great questions. Redfish Lakes has a total, the deepest point of 396 feet with an average depth of about 140 feet across the entire lake. Depends on what time of season for Ryrie, but the deepest point right now in Ryrie is probably 175 in the hole, with an average depth of about 80 feet of Ryrie. Yellowstone Lake is 136.1 square miles of lake with a deepest point of 409 feet with an average depth of 205. So you will not be diving that deep. And most of that stuff you have to work to get to. So I can absolutely teach tech out at Ryrie, but when we go out to Ryrie, we're going to be staying around the 20, 25-foot mark for most of your dives. And like I said, my goal would get you through 6 dives. I have to give you 4 dives. I'd rather give you 6. The maximum amount of training dives I can do in one day is 3. So we've got our sea turtle. We're going to go see our sea turtle. That's our sea turtle and our fish. It's a very pretty fish. If you want extra points, you say, yeah, that's a very good fish, Benjamin. Just kidding. So we're doing a 60-foot dive. How long are we going to do this dive? How long do you want to stay down? 40 minutes? Perfect. Can you do that dive? How much residual nitrogen do we have on dive 1? 0. Absolutely. Makes our total time what? 40 minutes? Easy enough. Now, magic question for you. You guys are going to start hitting these dive boats. Majority of recreational dive boats do all their dives for 50 minutes. Who knows why? You can use any portion of the materials that you like, or you can guess. But you'll find the majority of recreational boats do all their dives for 50 minutes. 5-0. That's one good guess. Anybody else want to gander a guess at that one? It has nothing to do with the tables. It has everything to do with their schedule. Most dive boats go out twice a day, and it's easier for them to say, okay, today's dive is going to be 60 feet for 50 minutes. We're going to have a surface interval of an hour, and then we're going to jump in for 60 feet for 50 minutes, and we're going to get back to the dock, get you guys unloaded, rinse the deck real quick, and get the new tanks on, and go out for our second dive of the day. That's the truth. Okay, so 60 feet for 50 minutes, or 40 minutes, I mean. What is our letter group? He is exactly right. All right, guys. we just got back up. It was cool. We saw his green turtles. We saw some loggerheads. They were big. You should have seen the freaking loggerhead I saw. It was like 5 feet shell to shell. And I've seen those, by the way. He was hiding under a rock sleeping. It was cool. Got some great pictures. Oh, it was awesome. How long do you want to stay out of the water before we get in that for the next dive? 3 hours? Okay. Get some lunch. Relax. Maybe have a Mai Tai. As virgin, of course. What's that make our new letter group? We're getting in the water as a G group diver after 3 hours. I'll see that. C group diver. Okay, great. All right, guys. All right. Your dive, this one. How deep do you want to go in the second dive? What reef do you want to see?
You
want to do another a 50 footer? We can absolutely do that. So we're going to do 50 feet for our second dive. Absolutely. How long are we staying for that 50-foot dive? See? So how long are we staying down? So we'll go ahead. So we'll plan it out as a 40-minute dive. We have a 40-minute dive because we want a little bit of a safety margin. Why not? Right? We're going to do a 40-minute dive. What's our residual nitrogen time on that 50-foot dive? We're a C group diver. 50 feet. 21 minutes. Makes our total time now 61 minutes. Right? So 61 minutes for 50 feet. What's our letter group? Is that right? Is that right? Is it H? Think so? Or you know so? 50-foot dive, 61 minutes. That's why I'm asking. So now, it would be I, because we always round up to the next level and down to the deeper point. So it's I. 61 minutes. I did that intentionally to you guys, by the way. I know the charts well enough that I was able to get you 1 minute over. So now we're an I group diver. All right. Well, Michelle, it's your turn. How long do you want to stay out of the water before we go through dive number 3? 2 hours? Perfect. If I'm an I group diver and I stay out of the water for 2 hours, what letter group does that put me in? What do you think? What group are you in now? F? Everybody concur? I feel like catch me if you can. You concur, doctor? You concur, doctor? Concur? Okay, make it out. I actually got an interview with him on Carson one time. And he actually did that too, which is even better. All right, so we're now an F group diver. Last dive of the day. How deep are we going, Michelle? 20 feet? Absolutely. Nikki loves the 20 to 40 foot mark and kicking around. So we're going to do a 20-foot dive. How long are we going to stay down at that 20 feet? How long do you want to stay down? No limit. No limit. One of the longest recreational dives that Nikki and I have together, 2.5 hours. Average depth of 30 feet. We went through probably half of 2 different tanks. We were diving side mounts. So we had 2 tanks on our sides, and we went through about half, maybe a little bit more of each tank. So we went through pretty much one whole tank, maybe a little bit more, because I think we both ended up around 1,500 psi in each tank, somewhere around there. So after 2.5 hours, it was an amazing dive. It's one of our favorite dives together that we talk about. that we went on, and because we went into swim throughs, we saw pukas, we found shells, all kinds of eels. What else did we see? Oh yeah, we saw some octopus. Wasn't that? But the dive before that, it was the first time I'd ever been inked by an octopus. We found one octopus that was about this big along a shell or a slope, and we checked him out for a little bit, and then I was coming along, and all of a sudden I saw this thing moved fast. I mean, it was like greyhound fast, like, and I was like, what did I just see? And I realized as I kind of replayed it in my mind, it was a little octopus. It was just a little guy, and he'd gotten under a rock and behind another little rock. And so I pulled the first rock out because I just want to see him. I didn't want to touch him. I didn't want to mess with him. But I pulled the first rock out, and the problem is it stirred up a bunch of sand around him. And so my brilliant idea was pull the rock out, and I'm kind of shooing some sand around because I just want to see him, and he did not like that. All of a sudden, he inked the heck out of the area. It was a lot. It was enough ink that could have filled this container. I'm telling you right now. It was.
I don't think Benjamin's time moved. Like he started.
Oh yeah. Well, he inked twice because he poof, and there was a second poof, and the second one I was so mesmerized by all this ink that had come out, this biomatter, and she saw him move. I didn't see him move because I was like, holy cow, and I'm backing up because it's just a lot. So, and he took off. He was just a little feller, but they're not real friendly in Hawaii because they get hunted. So, but yeah, it's one of our favorite dives. Went through about it.
Yeah.
I didn't get close enough to find out.
I was kind of amazed though. Like it kind of hung in the water. Like it didn't really like mix very well. Like it was this cloudy substance that just kind of
Yeah, it was
there.
it was almost like liquidy skin. It was a weird material. I've got a video of it somewhere. I'm gonna have to add that to my presentation. Anyway, the moral of the story is we're gonna do a 20-foot dive. We're going to do it all day long, no limit. So if we do it for 120 minutes, no big deal. We've got all the time that we want. Well, we haven't exactly, and we haven't gone past workman's critical difference. We're not at a point where remember, workers' critical difference is that we have to be better than double the surface pressure of nitrogen. So we'd have to be at 158% nitrogen. At 20 feet, we haven't even hit 1 atmosphere yet. So we're at an atmosphere in 2/3. So we're actually off-gassing nitrogen and we're safe. So we can do that all day long. Good job. Make sense? Now, there's a couple other pieces to be aware of in this. Let's see if I have it on here. I do. No, I don't. I need to add that to the slide. Absolutely. So, what happens if you stay down too long?
Should you exceed the Doppler no decompression time limits by less than 5 minutes on any dive, it is recommended that you ascend normally to 15 feet and then stop for at least 10 minutes or longer if your air supply allows. Should you exceed the Doppler no decompression limits by more than 5 minutes but less than 10 minutes on any dive, it is recommended that you stop at 15 feet for at least 20 minutes or longer if your air supply allows.
I have this magical thing called a safety stop. Anybody remember reading that in your homework at all? And we're going to go over safety stop a lot more in depth on our next class. But for tonight, let's just suffice it to say that if you go more than 20 feet for 20 minutes, you should do a safety stop. That's the magical litmus that considers it a dive. The safety stop looks like clear that off. No compliments on my turtle. I'm a little disappointed with this class. I'm thinking some people are not going to pass as easily as they think. Don't. So we have our water, we have our coral and our little fishies, and we have our little diver. He's got his little mask, he's got his tank, there he is. And he's making bubbles, right? As we start to ascend in the water column, we're going to make a magical stop. And our magical stop is going to be about 20 feet. And we're going to stop there. And as you witness very clearly, you get pretty much unlimited time at 20 feet, but you still are under pressure. So at 20 feet, we're going to stop for 3 to 5 minutes. Called a safety stop. Now, are safety stops required? Okay, it's like a yellow light. Do you have to stop at a yellow light? Should you stop at a yellow light? Fair enough. Red means stop, green means go, yellow means go really damn fast, right? In this case, we're dealing with our life, so it's a little bit different. You should, it's not required, you can absolutely do a direct descent, but you should stop at the 20 feet for 3 to 5 minutes. Take your time. Enjoy the sport. If you're doing a shore dive, it's actually pretty amazing because what you'll do, if you remember my little slide here, you can see I went down, and right here, this right here is really my deco stop. Well, right there is my this, because the red means I was in decompression. I did a very long dive. So that's my deco stop and sealing. The rest of this, up to about here, is all safety stop. And the cool part was I was on the shore. I was coming up. There were rocks. I did it in motion. I checked out little things under hidey holes. Looked under rocks, kicked along. I wasn't just in the abyss. So I enjoyed it. So doing a safety stop along the shore, great way to dive. Absolutely. So easy enough. My buoyancy practice, perfect buoyancy class. Absolutely, and you'll get better. You'll do better today. I have faith in that. So, congratulations. That is the end of night 1. 2, thank you. So what are we going to do tonight? By the way, this is Owen. He's my grandson. He's the cutest little snorkeler I've ever seen in my entire life. Love that little kid with all my heart, right? He's fun. He's my favorite grandson. My only grandson. But tonight, we're going to assemble our equipment again. We're going to do another basic weight check to make sure you can get down. We're going to do a no mask swim. I'm going to give you guys the opportunity with your gear to take your mask off and swim to one edge of the pool and back without your mask. Do you need a mask to dive? Do? Will you die without it?
I just remember reading something.
Nope, not a thing. You will not die if you do not have a mask. So we're going to do a no mask swim.
Have a mask on. There is an air cavity inside of it, so it's important to remember to occasionally breathe out your nose so that you're changing and adjusting.
Oh, that must have been what I was reading.
So to take it off, I don't need it. I can't see if I don't have one.
So, all right. So tonight, after we do our no mask swim, I'm going to give you guys a chance to practice your neutral dive position. We're going to go down to the deep, clear our ears, and I want to see you guys play my favorite game in the world. The floor is lava, so don't touch the ground. That's your goal. Get down there and swim. Stay in that horizontal position, parallel with the deck, and swim around and get comfortable with that. Secret is just add a little bit of air to your BC, but not too much, and use your breath to raise and lower in the water column. Easy enough? Once we get done with that, we are going to learn mask drills. There are 3 mask drills. Mask drill number 1 is going to be halfway. What you're going to do is with your mask on, you're going to crack it at the top. Keep breathing. Let the water in till it is halfway up. Once it's halfway up, Take 2 fingers. You're going to put them on the top of your mask. If you need to, you can pull from the bottom of the mask slightly. You're going to look up. You're going to breathe in through your mouth and out gently through your nose. So and you continue to do that process until all the water is clear for your mask. Good news. If you do it in 1 breath, you are a superstar. Congratulations. If you do it in 5 breaths, congratulations, you are a superstar. You passed. It takes you 10 breaths to do it. Congratulations, you passed, but we're probably going to talk about it a little bit to see if what we can do to make that a little more efficient for you.
Just inhale a little bit more.
Just keep doing it. Keep breathing in and out through your nose. In through your mouth, out through your nose. And do it gently. Next drill is going to be mask drill number 2. All the way up. Mask drill 2, all the way up. Same thing. You're going to take over, crack the top of your mask, and let the water all the way to the top. Once you've done that, you're going to look up. Breathe in. 2 fingers on the mask. If you need to, let it out from the bottom, a little pressure on the bottom. Hold the top, though, because remember, air escapes up, right? Try to hold the air in. Until all the water is clear for your mask. Again, 1 breath, 2 breaths, 5 breaths, it's pass-fail only. And your final drill is going to be mask drill number 3. Take the mask off. Simple enough. The process is going to be the same. I encourage you strongly. Take the right hand, put it over the front of the mask. Take the left hand and put the strap over the back of the hand. Here's where it gets tricky. Crack the mask at the top a little bit and let water in. Please, for the love of God, don't just pull it off. There is a suction that will happen. It is not comfortable. So, as you do mask drill 3, mask all the way off. Right hand over, left hand just comes to that. Crack the mask, let it fill up with water, take it all the way back out. Magically enough, the mask will not always come off in the right upright position. So I want you to get in the habit of taking that left hand, reaching over, finding the nose pocket, making sure the mask is in the correct position. So I promise you, if it falls off and you try to put it on upside down, it's not going to work. So reach over with that left hand, find the nose pocket, make sure it's in the right place, and show me that you're doing that. Take that mask. If you put the strap over around back, it should remain around back. Put it to your face. Pro tip for you, look up. Exhale as you're doing this and start from the top. As you do that, the bubbles that are coming out of your regular naturally will capture in your mask. Once you got your mask over top and it's sealed again, you've got your strap around the crown of your head, exactly like we did on 1, 2, 3. 2 fingers, 2 fingers, looking up, blowing gently, and it clears the mask. What questions do you have on mask drills 1, 2, or 3? Pretty easy. Good news is, I will go over it one more time before we go down, and I will demonstrate in the pool. Once we get down, I will tell you, all of you watch me mask drill number 1 halfway. Now, remember, if I'm asking you all to watch me, please don't do anything until I ask you to do something. I'm trying to demonstrate something for you. The next set of skills are going to be the regulator drills. You will have a regulator in your mouth, hopefully, because if you do not have it underwater when you're down there, it's not very comfortable, right? Maybe breathe on your regulator. So we're going to do regulator drill number 1, the purge. Okay? We're breathing along. Regulator 1. We're going to take the regulator out by grabbing it around the hilt at the point where it meets, the hose meets into the regulator. Take a breath. Point your regulator down. Take it out. Blow bubbles. Remember, this is a breathing sport. Always breathe. And if you want to make the motorboat sound, it makes it just that much more fun. And I can hear you do it. You will hear me do it because I do that intentionally, so you know to always breathe. If you don't breathe, I will make you do it again. And I'll tell you, remember, always breathe. So, take a deep breath, take it, grab it, point it down, take it away, put it back in, give it a forceful breath out. What happens is about a teaspoon of water can collect in the regulator between the mouthpiece and the valve. If you breathe that in, you will not be happy. It will make you feel like you're drowning. We don't want that. So breathe out and clear your regulator. Always, always, always. Regulator drill number 2 is very much the same. It's going to be the purge. So breathing along, take a breath, grab it at the hilt, turn it down, put it back in, push the purge button on the outside. Take a breath. Okay? Now, the value to you in this is that as you do this, you'll get good at doing it, and you will never take a breath of water into your lungs, which is a very painful thing. Like I said, regulators definitely get water in. Okay, regulator drill number 3. By the way, there are 5 of these. Regulator drills 1 through 5. We're going to do them in shallow. We're going to do them in the deep. We're breathing along. Regulator drill number 3 is the toss. So you're going to take a deep breath, turn it down, and you're going to toss it away. We're making our little bubbles. Gravity is your friend in this case. What I would like you to do is you're going to lean towards the regulator. What happens to the regulator when I lean right? Falls away from my body, doesn't it? Take that arm, straight elbow, reach it down, touch your side, touch your tank, bring it up, keeping that elbow nice and straight, bring it around, take that left hand, find your wrist, bring it down. Magically, your regulator will be right there. Once you, as you're blowing, remember, always blow. Once you get that back in your mouth, purge it your preferred method, whether that be a purge or a blow, whichever you have more gas for. Okay? Simple enough. That's the toss. Whichever one you want to do. Regulator drill number 4 is going to be the change. Simple enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a breath, toss it away. I'm going to take my left hand, or I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm going to take my right hand. I'm going to grab my secondary. I'm going to pull it out of that piece of rubber. I'm going to put it in my mouth, and I'm going to purge it. I'm breathing, right? I've got a secondary ready to go. Now that I'm breathing again, I'm going to take that left hand. I'm going to take it and put it underneath the bottom of my tank. I'm going to take my right hand. I'm going to straight out, come over top, and I'm going to feel for the first stage, and I'm going to find my octo, and I'm going to bring it back down. Once I found this, I'm going to go ahead and drop my secondary out, put this in, purge it my preferred method. Regulator drill number 4. Now, once you've got that all situated, where you have your primary back in your mouth, you're going to take your secondary, and I'm going to ask you to clean it up. So please put it away. Okay? I am a dangling Nazi. I do not like to see danglies. So please don't let things dangle on you. Okay? That's regulator drill number 4, the switch. Okay? Regulator drill number 5 is the free flow. You're going to have your regulator in your mouth. What I want you to do is take a breath. Look down. You're going to take it out of your mouth. You're going to put it up to your mouth. You're going to look straight down. You're going to push the purge button with it just below your mouth. And you can take 3 breaths for me to prove that you can breathe off a free-flowing regulator. Once you've got your 3 breaths, put it in your mouth, purge it your preferred method, look up at me, and after each drill, just give me the okay to let me know that you're alive and well and that you're not freaking out on me. Absolutely. Simple enough. I'm going to take my regulator, deep breath, take it out of my mouth. I'm going to look down. I'm going to take it, holding it like so, where I can push the purge button. I'm going to put it either halfway in my mouth or just below my mouth, right there. I'm going to purge it, and once it's going, you're going to feel it. Take 3 breaths. Take 3 breaths. And again, I'll demonstrate once we're in the pool, in the shallow and the deep. We're going to need to do all these skills in the shallow and the deep. We'll do them at least twice in open water as well, and we'll do them again next week as well as the week after as well. So we do them a fair amount. I have to do mass drills at least 3 times in the pool and at least twice in open water to make sure you're good to go. We're going to learn about orally inflating our BC. So you may have noticed that there is an apparent mouthpiece on your BC. It's cute. It's like a BC but smaller. Here we go. Here's an adult. That looks like an adult size. So we'll notice on our left-hand side we have an inflator. Did anybody notice that there's a mouthpiece on it? Simple enough. What I'd like you to do is you're going to, from the bottom, take your regulator in your mouth, take a deep breath, put it down, push the end button when your mouth is over top of it, if you notice, it fills up. Push the button to inflate. Let the button go when you're not blowing air into it. All I need to see you do it is just, I just need to see it one time while we're under. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. Easy enough. We're going to orally inflate our BC. I would like to see when at some point, each of you go to your buddy and say, are you okay to ascend? If you are, what do you do? If I asked you that, are you okay to ascend? Cool. You're going to come together. Make sure you're staying right in front of each other. You're going to take that inflation and you're going to let a little bit of air out of it, right? Because as we rise the water column, the air is going to expand. We let some of the air out and we're going to start a swimming ascent. Once we get to the surface, you can push that button till high heaven to let it inflate all the way up. And once you guys are at the surface and you're fully inflated, I want you, are you okay? You're okay? Good to go. But I'd like to see you guys do it as a team. By the way, if I come to you and I say, you, what do you think I'm saying? Good job. That's exactly what I'm asking. So, fun thing is, I will ask you guys that a lot. There's a couple questions we ask a lot. Are you okay? There you go. Okay? It's always a question. It's always a question. And I'll ask you a lot. Now, here's why, in case you're wondering, is I'm constantly checking in on you guys because I want to know where you're at. If you are not okay, please tell me. Okay? I have seen this happen from a very experienced diver that I was training in technical diving in XR. He had a slow inflation malfunction on his dry suit that was causing air to go into his dry suit constantly. We were at a deco stop where he couldn't just pop to the surface at 25 feet. It was enough that he started to look like the Michelin Man because he had so much air in his dry suit, and he was holding onto a very big rock, feet in the air, kicking like he was freaking Michael Phelps. His dive buddy came to him, and right in front of him, he looked over. He gave him, I'm like, and then I kid you not, I was sitting back because my job as the instructor when we start teaching XR is not to be on top of you. It's a very different experience, this versus XR. Those are very big dives and very experienced divers. So I step back, and my job is to make sure you don't drown, help if there is an emergency, and be a gremlin. I cause problems. Those are the three things that I do as a technical dive instructor when I'm open water teaching my students. Is I stay back, you guys have to make decisions. And I watched this and I thought, dude. And then another diver from the other buddy team came over and did the exact same thing. You okay? Right in his face. You're not okay. And so on these dives, I run a much higher blend of nitrox than all the students for emergency safety. If I have a student that has a problem, I let them use 40% nitrox, I use 60%. So it's a higher safety level that I can throw a student on really quickly and help them flush nitrogen if there's a problem until I can get them to pure O on the surface and make them safe. So I run a few things that are a lot safer, right? So I grabbed my deco bottle. I went over to him, tried to give him this. Are you okay? I see there's a problem. And he's like, no. And I'm like, take the dang deco. No, I'm okay. So I talked to him a little bit more forcefully on the surface of, if you're not okay, tell us. You don't have to solve this. I saw you hanging onto the rock for dear life. I saw you kicking like frickin' Michael Phelps. Obviously, something wasn't okay. You could have told us, I'm really, really light. Give us something, what all the other divers could have gotten over, and we literally could have laid on top of him. We could have helped hold him down. We all had plenty of weight to be able to stay down. It was our first dive of the day. We all had a little extra weight. And when I dive with students, I always dive about 5-10 pounds heavier than I need to. So if I have to grab a student, I can still yank them down and control them even better. So
is that the only thing?
Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do. Is I could have put myself and another student on his legs to hold him down to have additional weight. to try and keep him down. Another student could have also grabbed a rock and grabbed the lower part of his BC and pulled him down. So we could have, there's other things we could have tried to hold him down in other ways so that he did have to kick. Because my concern in a deco stop, he was kicking like mad. He was burning air like crazy. So things do happen. The good news is all the instructors have been through it. The worst challenge that I had with an open water student is I had a student go to full equipment rejection on me. We were about 25 feet in Ryrie doing they had come late, so I was working on her mass drills, and we were going through these exact mass drills. And I said, mass drill 1, halfway, and she's cracked it, and she started shaking her head really weird. And I mean, when I'm doing the skills with you, I will be this close. If I have to take my elbow off my side, I'm too far away. So I'll always be in your bubble. Just get used to it. It's not that I'm trying to, be all up on you, but I'm making sure you're safe. And I was right there on her. And I kept watching it. I was like, what's going on? That's kind of weird. And all of a sudden she ripped her mask off. I thought, I guess we're doing mass drill 3 instead. All right, I'll go with that. And, things seemed weird, but I was like, okay. And all of a sudden she took the mask and she pulled it over her arm. She spit the regulator out and started trying to wet cat to the surface in full panic. Good news is if I'm that close, I've got you. I grabbed her BC. I grabbed her regulator. I shoved the regulator in her mouth, and I put it on full purge, so there was no way she was going to inhale water. She was inhaling just air. Grabbed her and controlled her ascent to the surface, got her to the surface, inflated her BC 100%, got her on her back, calmed her down, and talked to her very gently until we got to the sore where she could touch. And then we talked for about 15, 20 minutes about what had happened. So the good news is as an instructor, I will be right on top of you at all times. You are safe. Nothing will happen. I want you to be assured of that. I've seen it, done it, been there, got it. I've got you guys covered, right? If that does happen, what happened in that situation, we got her to shore, calmed her down, talked to her for a little while, and she just had a moment of panic. She ended up passing the class with aces. We got back down, got through all the mass drills, no big deal. So it happens. Easy enough.
That's how I felt. Oh, this isn't right.
Sure. Perfect. Any questions?